Hi, everybody, and welcome. We're doing things a little bit differently today because we have Steve Sharpe, and we want to make sure that he gets as much time as possible to do his presentation. So just one thing before we move to Steve, if you want to learn more about our webinars and be able to hear when these webinars are coming up, if you're not already on our listserv, Miss Ivy is going to post into our chat the link to join our email listserv so that you can hear about these webinars as they're coming up. And you'll also have the opportunity to hear about pertinent things that are happening in the industry. So with that, I'm going to move right to introducing Steve. Steve Sharpe is a senior attorney at the National Consumer Law Center, and he focuses on foreclosures and mortgage lending. He's always a popular panelist because he has a wealth of information about mortgage servicing, especially for FHA, VA, and USDA mortgages. So Steve, take it away. You're muted, Steve.
I'm muted. I hit the wrong button. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many folks. A very important topic. A lot of change in how we help borrowers work through defaults. And so happy to sort of the plan, I think, for today is just give you some basic concepts of some really new options for FHA and VA loans. So we're going to do this at a pretty high level with some takeaways. But I'm available by email if and the email's on the PowerPoint. We can also circle back on these. So we're going to start at a high level today. Try to make sure folks are familiar with what's new, and we can always circle back and get into more depth on these. So I'm going to share my screen. And we are going to get going from start. Okay, federal loss mitigation updates. So we're going to focus the presentation today around two big policy announcements that came up earlier this year. FHA Mortgagee Letter 2024-02, which released the payment supplement, a brand new loss mitigation option for FHA insured loans, and last week's VA servicing purchase. I have a lot of slides in here on the VA servicing purchase, but it's a lot of links, and I will tell you that the policy there, some of the specific eligibility requirements, we expect to change as we all dive in. So we're going to hit a little more detail on payment supplement and then spend a little time with a higher level on the VA servicing purchase. So a reminder, you have all heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. The crucial thing when you're helping a borrower to know is who is the relevant investor calling the shots. When we're thinking about what options are available to help someone who fell behind with their mortgage, who is now looking to see what they can do, we have to know who is setting the rules. It's crucial. Because even if it's the same mortgage servicer, and I know a lot of you with experience know this, but we're talking all levels here, it's always a helpful reminder. If it's the same mortgage servicer from client A to client B, different rules might apply. What we need to know is who is calling the shots. In other words, to put this a little more simply, do the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, or USDA guidelines set the terms? Are we dealing with a federally backed mortgage or not? We're not dealing with the federally backed mortgage. Often, as a general matter, we don't really know what terms apply. But if we are dealing with one of those federally backed investor classes, we got to look at those guidelines to know, hey, what are the rules of the road here? If you have any trouble on this, I think we've talked about before on Leaders in Housing Counseling. We at NCLC have some materials on this. You can also reach out to me if you're struggling about how do I figure it out. We do have some material on that. We're going to zoom by this, but it's always important to remember that's where we're going, where we have to start right up there with what is the borrower's financial information, what's their situation. We need to know who's setting the rules of the road. So what we're going to start with is an exciting new update from FHA. So this applies to FHA insured loans. And this Mortgagee Letter 2402. It did two things. And one sounds maybe a little confusing, but but I promise you it is not. The first thing is say, we are releasing a brand new program called the Payment Supplement. It's nothing that FHA has done before. It is filling a gap caused by these crazy spikes in interest rates. And it has been on the drafting table for a while. And now we know that it's coming. So it is starting May 1st, 2024. That is when servicers can begin offering it. But it has to be implemented by June 1st, 2025. So what does that mean? We have heard it's going to take mortgage servicers a while to put this in place. So we do not know between that May 1st and January 1st whether it's actually going to be available for a particular borrower and a particular mortgage servicer. It may be something that you want to ask. So we are starting the payment supplement. And as you can see, probably it's not. We're going to be still months away from it actually being something for borrowers to access. So right now you can spend some time just sort of familiarizing yourself with it, because this is something to anticipate, something that is coming on the line soon, but it is coming pretty soon. Those months, as you know, will pass faster than you think. The other thing that happened is it continued through this mortgagee letter, and mortgagee letters are those letters from HUD to mortgage servicers, which are public. They get put in the handbook, and then those are the ones that set the terms for what options are available to folks. The other thing this mortgagee letter did was continue the suspension of FHA HAMP. Now, that may sound like a problem, but I will assure you this does not mean there are no options for borrowers until payment supplement. Instead, we're going to look at the next slide, in a slide coming up, we're going to use the COVID options for all borrowers. But so we're temporarily suspending FHA HAMP. However, I wanted to put this language up here because the suspension of FHA HAMP, this is a takeaway, so just keep this in mind. It applies pretty broadly, but there is one class of borrowers or clients, however you want to look at it, that will still use FHA HAMP. And those are successors in interest. And I know that there have been people who have been very frustrated by this, and it is unclear. So just to keep in mind when you're working with those folks who are maybe inheriting, who are succeeding in the interest to people who had title to the property or had the loan, those folks are still going to be evaluated through FHA HAMP. So when you're working with those borrowers or those homeowners, I should say, who are successors, FHA HAMP is still what you use. But this gigantic other class of borrowers, we're not using FHA HAMP. So what are we using, you might ask? We use the COVID recovery options through April 30th, 2025. Those mean those streamlined, no application or minimal application loss mitigation options. We've talked about what those are on the call. There's a standalone partial claim, the recovery mod. Those options are what is going to take the gap of FHA HAMP between when it started to be suspended going forward. And the payment supplement will run along with those. So you can kind of see there's a not exact sync up. So the payment supplement, which we'll get into, will work and coexist with the COVID recovery modification. And you have to figure out when it applies. But so what we have to know is, like, for most people, there is no FHA HAMP. You review all borrowers regardless of hardship. General matter, you don't need a COVID hardship for the COVID recovery mod. That is what we generally use for folks. And then we add on the payment supplement when that comes online soon.
Okay.
Pause there, because those are really crucial details, and we're going to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, I got a few questions. So
Great.
this one goes right back to one of the first things you said. Are there other questions that housing counselors should be asking besides the relevant investor? Other crucial questions.
That comes to the craft of housing counseling, which is so important. You want to sit with your client and think about what their possibilities are, their job, connection to the house, all those things that you all add so much value to, and make sure that you get a full picture of a borrower when you work with them. But I just always want to remind people that in that uh, package of or questions, the things that you need to know when you're starting to get to know a client, one of the things you have to know is who's the investor in the loan.
And is there one site to go to find out who the investor is, especially when they're government, or do you have to go to each separate one?
Kind of to go to each separate one. There's a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loan lookup. VA is often very clear. It is usually stated on the mortgage documents. FHA, you generally know borrower might be paying FHA PMI. There may be indications in the loan documents, or MIP, indication in the loan documents. There's often an FHA case number. USDA guaranteed is a little harder, and we have some tips on that. But the general matter is you don't get to go to just one source. You have to piecemeal a little bit, but there's a limited number of places that you need to go. For FHA insured loans, you look for that case number, you look for the MIP payment, and you look for other indications in the document, whether it's FHA insured. You can always call the National Servicing Center for FHA if you are unclear.
And then somebody's just asking if somebody is going through a modification, but it looks like the new payment supplement might be better for them. Should they wait? Should they ask their servicer to wait
So
and consider them for the other one?
We're going to get into that. There are some things
Okay.
to know about the payment supplement. I would say you're in April right now. So I think the way I would look at it is that I think most servicers, this is just a guess, are going to be more on the end of the year time frame here before they get the payment supplement up and running. They have until January 1st, 2025. So I think it is probably a challenge to wait that many months before you get to payment supplement. But you can talk to your servicer and ask, hey, when are you going to get this online? I think this might be a good type of thing for me. But we're still in the early part of that. So just to repeat it one more time, right now, for almost all hardships, we have the little bit of the successors and interest. There's also some rules on disaster, which we're not going to get into. For the most part, for almost all hardships, we are going to be looking at the COVID recovery options, the streamlined loss mitigation options that we've gone through. Payment supplement will be attached onto that and will be part of that waterfall. So we're COVID recovery, we're going to have payment supplement added, and then April 3rd, that's through April 30th, 2025. What we anticipate by then is that HUD will have another revision and sort of unify all of this together. So that's why we have this time frame, is that it's not always going to be called the COVID recovery option going forward. So we will expect further guidance from HUD. But for right now, if you have any takeaways on that, we look at the streamlined options for almost all cases that walk through your door, and then we'll add this payment supplement on. And where FHA HAMP, for the most part, goes to the side, except for a few people. Okay.
Onward.
That's the main takeaway. So why are we dealing with this payment supplement? And I think you all probably know the answer to that. And that is, we are seeing a lot of loan modifications for FHA insured loans that just aren't providing payment relief. We're struggling here. And why are we struggling? Because the market interest rate that we use to sort of as part of the terms for the loan modifications for FHA have increased, and they increased a while ago. So we have a bunch of borrowers who have real low interest rates often, or at least a lot of borrowers have real low interest rates. And now you have market interest rates that are way higher. So FHA also know that, these mods, and you've been seeing them and been sharing them, have really not been providing the relief. So the payment supplement is supposed to be a program that helps when the market rate is substantially higher than the borrower's note rate. That is the gap we are filling here. So what it is it relies on partial claim. Many of you have worked on with a partial claim. We're gonna remind you what that is. Partial claims, when we're talking about FHA insured loans, are those 0% interest loans, second loans, from HUD to the borrower that are used to help when borrowers are in default. We've used those classically when we talk about a standalone, where you just take all of the money that is owed and just have it be at the end at 0% in a loan from HUD. That is one way. We also know that it can be used in connection with a loan modification. We're pretty familiar with partial claims. They're the 0% interest-free loan from HUD to help borrowers who are behind. So payment supplement really uses more partial claim. And it does so in order to avoid increasing interest rates. So there are a few things that you need to know about payment supplement when you're assessing whether it's going to work. The main thing, the thing you have to understand, is that to participate in a payment supplement, the borrower must have partial claim that is available. They must have some partial claim capacity that is available. As a general rule, a borrower may only get 30% of their unpaid principal balance at the time of the first partial claim, 30% as a max amount. So you can't just partial claim. You can't throw all the borrower's loan in a 0% interest rate. We know that wouldn't make any sense. So there is a statute rule that says you only get so much partial claim, and it's about 30% of the borrower's unpaid principal balance. So what we know are that many borrowers over the last 15 years may have maxed out their partial claim. So if you're that borrower, or if you're sitting with that client and you're thinking about how payment supplement's going to work, but you know that partial claim has already been maxed out, this program isn't going to work. This program is for people who have available. So how do you figure that out? Well, you have to do some digging. You can look, of course you can ask, that's a challenge. You can look at the records, land records, you can see what's attached. You can ask the servicer, that's going to be important, or calling HUD also are ways to figure out if there's partial claim capacity. So you need partial claim to do this, but you need a decent amount of partial claim. So you're going to need enough to cover the arrears, and you're going to need enough partial claim to provide payment relief. Because here's what we're going to do.
So here's a quick question.
Yep.
Sorry. So
No, go ahead.
30% of what point in the mortgage? The original loan amount?
It's 30%, a little technical. You figure out the max partial claim by going to the very first partial claim the borrower had, and you do 30% of the unpaid principal balance of the loan at that time. That does not count arrears. So
What if there was never any partial claim?
There's never any partial claim, then it's 30% of the time of your asking for it. So if client comes into your office and they have a $250,000 unpaid principal balance, not counting arrears, we're looking at balance. If they have an unpaid principal balance of $250,000, they're in your office, never had a partial claim before, 30% of that amount, the $250,000 in my example.
So it's if they'd had a partial claim before, you got to go back to the time that they got the original partial claim.
Yeah, that's why
Okay.
What you're doing is important. You have to go back and then you have to subtract it out, right? So if they got 15,000, that 15,000 goes against the cap. So what we are going to do with payment supplement is give borrowers more partial claim than just what is needed to cover arrears to start reducing their monthly payment. That is the concept here. If they owe $10,000 and they have partial claim available, you could just put them at $10,000 and bring them current. But what if that borrower needs payment relief? What if their interest rate's low and a mod's not going to happen? What we're going to do is we're going to start giving borrowers more partial claim to supplement their payments going forward. That is why it is a payment supplement. We're going to give them more than the amount to cover the arrears to supplement the payments going forward. By doing that, we are not going to change the interest rate of the loan. And we are not going to change the term of the loan. We're going to instead leave those alone and give borrowers additional money through the partial claim. Now, it's not giving, because as you can see from this last bullet point, they're going to have an increased amount of 0% interest loan due and payable at the end. So this is 0% interest money, which is a good deal, but it does not come with it just doesn't disappear. We are supplementing the payment and asking for it later. Why are we doing this? Because we're trying to, in these cases, preserve low interest rates, trying to not have terms be extended. But the trade-off is we're going to have a bigger amount due at the end of the loan. So the main thing, and I've been saying this as much as I can possibly say it, counselors are crucial. They help people understand things. We know how important your role is. Here's another place that's important. Making sure people understand that while this is going to be something that's helpful, they are going to need to plan to figure out at the end. And we've talked about how that works before, but this is going to be it. So let's bring this concept home a little more. What are we doing here? We are, when we have a borrower who's fallen behind, we are going to, and we say PSA, payment supplement, sort of the same thing. We are going to reinstate the loan with partial claim. And then, when we are not going to change the rate, we are not going to change the term. But if that borrower needs more payment relief, what we're going to do is say, for 3 years, we're going to take additional partial claim and apply it to the borrower's portion of the monthly payment. So the borrower pays a lower portion and partial claim is covering some of it. Again, this is a way to provide payment relief. It is temporary. Again, counselors, crucially important, helping people understand that what we're doing here for people who need it is giving them a temporary payment relief, but they're going to have to not only figure out what to do at the end of the loan, but also recognize that the payment is going to go back to where it started. Now, again, why is this important? Because we don't want rates going from 3 to 7, these major rate increases or the term extended. But this is different. And we're not getting even into the details here. Like I said, just starting to get familiar with what the type of plan looks like, crucially important. So we're hanging on this slide. What are we doing? Again, reinstate. No rate or term change. Give people a temporary payment reduction. And then we're going to counsel people, remember, this is to help. Your payment's going to go back up to where it started. And you're going to have to pay the 0% interest rate loan at the end. So let's just do a few more And so where does this come into the waterfall? Like I
So
said,
I'm going to
go ahead,
interrupt you
Emily.
quick, Steve,
Let's
because
do there.
there's a bunch of
And
questions
there
about
should
the
be, because
partial claim.
this is brand
So
new, brand
first of
new.
all, I do want to let you know that there's been a couple of comments about it. Even when a homeowner gets it, it is really hard for housing counselors to really explain to homeowners that a partial claim is okay and how it works.
I feel you.
So
Yes, it
yeah.
is. And I think
So yeah, so
yeah,
a couple of questions around it. First
sure.
of all, is 30% still the max, even under the payment supplement?
30% is still the max under the payment supplement. That's
Okay.
why that first slide about what is available is so important. That's a statutory limit. We can't do anything about that. So that includes how much payment supplement you're going to get as well.
Um, and then the other thing around it's a balloon payment at the end of their
It
mortgage
is.
or when they sell the home. It has to be recovered.
Yep.
There isn't any interest that's earned on it. It's a
Correct.
kind of a silent thing that sits there and it doesn't increase unless you need more of your partial claim. And then there's just kind of this question about can the homeowner choose how much of the partial claim they want to use? They don't have to use all of it. It's just the amount that they need, right?
That is a great question. So I think okay, so all should feel like, well, that's a lot to understand. This is fitting back into the waterfall. So if we think about what the first step of the current waterfall is, you ask people if they can resume their mortgage payment. And if they can get a standalone partial claim. They can still do that. That's right up front. It's number one. And that standalone partial claim is very, very, very valuable right now. Because while it still does all of those things that it is due at the end at 0% interest, it helps people preserve low rates. So a borrower walking in does not have to go to the payment supplement. If they say right up front, nope, it's great. I just want to resume my payment. I can afford it. I'm back on my feet. I'm just taking a standalone partial claim. You still get that option. This doesn't come in until later on down the waterfall, and for people who are new at this, the list of options sort of, we say waterfall, it is the process by which we identify what the appropriate option is for people. So, and then I believe, and this is where no one has gotten one of these yet. Just remember, we are working at a high level partially because no one's gotten one of these yet, and we still don't exactly know how it's going to work. My understanding is you can terminate it before your 3 years are up, and there may be real benefits to doing that. It's a little bit of a challenging financial calculus there about whether you want to stay with 0% interest and do something else with your money, but let's put all that aside and just say, if people, I believe there will be mechanisms to terminate your payment supplement early should you choose. Some of those things, unfortunately, though, were still the devil's still in how it actually works, because we're still don't quite know how that's going to go yet.
So just one quick thing. I just want to remind all of our attendees, if you have questions for Steve, please put them in the Q&A box rather than in the chat. The chat keeps scrolling. I'll lose track of them. And also, Steve was gracious enough to really squeeze us in today to do this, and we only have him for a certain amount of time. So if you are putting your questions in the Q&A box, if we don't get to the question while Steve is here today, I'll be sending the questions to Steve and he'll answer them for us.
Yep.
So, all right,
We can do
thanks.
that.
Go ahead.
Here's a good example of what we were talking about with respect to fitting in. So again, we're only getting to a payment supplement if the recovery modification, the previous and current mod option, does not result in a 15% payment reduction. So we are not traveling to this road until a borrower has said, ooh, I can't do a standalone partial claim. I need payment relief. And then the recovery modification does not provide that much payment relief. And for the most part, with where rates are relative to where borrower note rate is, we're not getting a lot of 15% payment reductions right now. So only then do you move to a payment supplement. And then what we're trying to target with a payment supplement is a 25% reduction in the monthly payment. The purpose here is really to provide payment relief to those folks who need it. And we know that while some people come out on the other side of a hardship ready to go, not everyone does. And so this is there to try to provide some targeted payment relief to folks. But of course, that works great for people who have already, or sorry, who have not already used partial claim, right? You've got a bunch of partial claim left over because you haven't used it yet, or you've only used a very little bit. Your client will probably fit well in this and be able to use arrears and then have some partial claim left over for a reduction. But if you're not, there's also a mechanism for a minimum amount. That's where the math gets very challenging of fitting between the minimum and maximum and how you deal with folks who have already used their partial claim and seeing how much payment relief is available. We are not getting in there yet. We have not really had this tested yet. It's going to be a part of what we do next. But just to let you know, there is a range between the minimum amount of relief and the target amount of relief that you may be able to have for your client who has less capacity than they would need otherwise. That is going to be part of the challenge here. So you can do it. There is not any more different terms of relief. If you had been paying attention to this and you saw that there was a time where we were looking at 5-year versus 3-year terms, HUD has eliminated that and now just has 3-year terms. My understanding of why they did that is this is already pretty complicated. This is already going to be pretty complicated for servicers. So we're not going to try to figure out that extra math. We're saying these are 3-year temporary payment reduction, and then we're only going to try to figure out what the actual payment relief is. But again, this all gets added to the waterfall that we talked about at the beginning. That's why it's so important to understand what rules apply, because they all are going to fit together here.
And these reductions are based on principal and interest, right? Not taxes and insurance.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is, I know, very challenging right now because we have, because folks are facing big tax increases and big insurance increases. These are based on principal and interest, but it is 25% reduction, which is good. So there's other parts of the mortgagee letter that you're gonna want to deal with, or we're gonna want to look at as you learn about this. It talks about how to determine what option is appropriate for the borrower. We kind of covered that in talking about the standalone versus the mod versus payment supplement. You won't need this yet, but just keep it in the back of your mind. You're going to need this eventually. There are rules about how to handle borrowers who fall behind on their payment supplement payments. So again, how this is going to work is the borrower is going to, during the period of receiving payment supplement, there's going to be a partial claim amount that covers one part of the loan. They're still going to need to cover 75% around or more of the loan. So of course, we need to know what to do with borrowers who fall behind on their payment supplement payments. There's also some problematic language, if you were following this, about bankruptcy. That has pretty much been released, and this is about people who have had bankruptcy. Now we're just going back to generally the old rules from HUD, and we can talk about that at some other time, but the bad changes have gone away. So Ellie, that is the very high level of payment supplement. I could talk about VA, but I think first we should, if there's any questions, spend a little time to make sure people understand this at a high level, because it's important just to get the concept right first before and then later we can talk about the details.
Sure. All right, let's see. Let's see. What happens if people that have already been given an unaffordable HAMP modification, will they be able to go back and redo their mods?
So that is going to be very challenging to do. And probably won't, if they've already had I think it's best to think about, will payment supplement help that? Not really, because payment supplement does not revert the term and the interest rate back. You use it to preserve the rate and term they have. So folks have already gotten a big interest rate increase and big term extension. This doesn't undo it. So you have to recognize where the limitations of it are, and that's one.
Okay. Would it always be a 3-year period, or could it be a shorter duration? I'm not sure what is being referred to exactly, but it sounds like you do.
So that's the payment supplement period. So again,
Okay.
a reminder, just because we're all trying to get used to this, there is if you are approved for the payment supplement, it is a 3-year term of receiving extra partial claim to reduce the principal and interest payment. So that is that 3-year term where the borrower is paying less than the contract amount, and partial claim is being applied to supplement the payment. So that's that 3-year term. So I believe borrowers will be able to terminate it, but they're gonna have to follow whatever steps they need to terminate it. So that is one thing just to keep in mind. They're not going to be able to agree to a less than 3-year payment term up front. So I think that's where it can be different.
So I'll just say there's a few of the counselors are expressing concern about the rate changing when at the end of the 3 years, very similar to the HAMP step program, and that caused a problem.
The rate, great question. The rate does not change. That is one of the benefits here. What you're doing is keeping the borrower's rate and term throughout the whole period. What is increasing is the partial claim supplement goes away. So I'm really glad they brought up the HAMP term escalations or payment escalation. So that's what we remember from those of us doing those cases, is that you would get different periods, and then your interest rate would stair step up, and your payment would go up. Here, the borrower is returning to the payment they already had. Their rate and term are not changing. What's happening is that for a 3-year period, there is payment supplement from the partial claim. So the borrower is not having to pay as much because their partial claim is growing a little bit every month. But their interest rate will never change, does not change, and their term does not change. Of course, unless they modify it later. If they modify it later, of course, it could change. But the benefit of the payment supplement, it is for people who have low rates already and want to keep them. And that's why it's different from what happened with HAMP. And that's why it does not help the person who already agreed to a modification that increased their interest rate. So I think folks are getting it here. These questions
Yeah.
are really good.
And a couple of questions about the exceeding the value of the home with this workout.
Yeah, there's no rules about that here. So this is the FHA, all the federal rules basically don't factor in what the borrower's home value is. The FHA insured loan program guarantees is this an insurance program to incentivize the lender, so it doesn't really deal with that. Of course, other sort of legal claims like that, I hope, are connected to legal aid lawyers or other lawyers around who can address that. If there are any problems with predatory lending or other issues, it's always a good reason to connect with lawyers if you're not one who can evaluate those cases. But this program does not, the value of the home does not factor in here.
And what if somebody already received what is considered the maximum number of workouts by FHA? Would they be eligible for this?
So I would say it this way, that if a borrower has received a bunch of workouts already from FHA, they are probably already over their partial claim maximum. Maybe not, but likely if the borrower has already had several, they have probably had partial claim applied to their loan, and thus that would limit how much partial claim is available to use for a payment supplement. That goes back to that first slide, which reminds you what you need to identify what the maximum partial claim is for the loan, and then know if there have been partial claims given, because that limits how much payment supplement you can get, your client can get.
Okay. Let's see. Will confirmed successors be able to access this option?
Don't think so. I don't. That's something that I would like to believe is still a live issue. I don't believe it's very clear. There are rules about successors in the mortgagee letter, and if you've got questions about that, let me know, or like details about it when it comes up, let us know. We're always at NCLC trying to advocate for folks who are successors. It's a tough situation, and I think the rules aren't going to be. I think there are rules addressing that. They're not. The short version is they're not that simple to deal with.
And will this become a permanent part of the waterfall?
Yes, it is so yeah, it is not set to sunset. The hope is that it becomes a permanent part of the waterfall. We're going to find out how it fits in with the rest of the waterfall probably the next year. We know this because HUD has said the FHA HAMP is suspended until April 30th, 2025, and also the COVID recovery options are through April 2025. So we know that this is on the topic for HUD to figure out how these are all going to sort out. But I do not expect payment supplement to go away.
And a couple of people have asked about this, and I just want to clarify because Steve talked about this earlier. While this goes into effect on May 1st, the servicers are not required to be offering it until January of 2025.
Yep.
So you can talk with the servicer about it, but they don't have to have themselves set up and ready for it until January 2025, just so everybody knows, because there's a lot of question about marketing it to their homeowners and talking with their homeowners about it. And then the general question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, Steve, but a few people have asked about, will the servicers be actually outreaching to their borrowers, or or should housing counselors proactively reach out?
I think so. Let's ask sort of some of those threads first. I think right now, if I'm a housing counselor, we're just trying to understand what is coming online, because you will best advocate and work with your client as you understand it. So I think you all are doing the right thing in trying to figure out how this goes. I think for how this is going to work when it comes online, you're going to do the thing you always do, which is you have the knowledge of what are the possibility options that are possible. And so when you know the servicer has it ready and you're going to talk to the servicer, you're going to start advocating, pushing for like, doesn't the payment supplement work here? Don't we fit in that way? And if you see a mod that, and you're in March of 2025 and the payment supplement is online and you see a mod that doubles the interest rate and you think, well, this borrower has partial claim available, shouldn't we be evaluating for a payment supplement? That's the sort of stuff that you all do so well, and that's what you're going to be doing. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to know how this works in the next year.
Ellie, and one role that we could play, and Steve, is that we could reach out to servicers, ask for what the implementation timeline is, and sort of set that up on our servicer contact information and circulate those lists to the people so that that the information's available soon.
That's a great point, Bruce. Yeah, that's the thing for summer, fall, is starting to talk to servicers and finding out where are you on your payment supplement implementation. That's right.
So there are a lot more questions, Steve, but I want to leave enough time for you to at least talk a little bit about VASP.
Yeah, let's do this. We're going to do VASP very quickly. It is out. This is for VA. Oh, it looks like I can't share a screen yet. So I will just talk until this Ebony's screen is off. So as we know, many of you know, for VA guaranteed borrowers, there have just been a real lack of options available. There have not been a partial claim for VA guaranteed borrowers, and modifications often, not always, have been greatly increasing payments. So VA released its VA servicing purchase last week. We are still going through it, trying to figure out what it's going to mean. There are a few very high level takeaways. First, it says effective May 31st. That is when servicers can start offering it. Here we go. That is when servicers can start offering it, but they do not have to offer it until maybe October 31st, but that's hard to know. We're going to skip to this. That's one aspect of it. Here we go. I don't know why I can't get to. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, we'll just run out like this for a second. Sorry about the. All right, let me stop and then try it again. Okay. Okay, PowerPoint. It's just not working right now, but that's okay. So they're going to start offering it May 31st, but it is not going to be, they do not expect people to have it in place until October 1st. So I think when you're working with VA borrowers, the question you're going to have for your servicer is VASP online? When is VASP going to be online? There is guidance. The links are actually kind of the most important part of this. So I have provided links because you need to know where the guidance is to even understand it. So we have a new handbook, chapter 9, or new section of the chapter 9 of the handbook. We also have a new waterfall, appendix F to the waterfall. So that is in place. There's the link. What is this thing? Very briefly, for borrowers who are not getting reasonable offers, VASP allows VA to purchase the loan in default and modify it at a 2.5% interest rate to either a 30 or 40-year term, targeting a 20% payment reduction. Again, target does not mean that's where it shall be, but target is target. So VASP is, why does this matter? Because it's taking it out of the private market, and the private market has to do with why rates go like this for modifications, and I know folks have seen that. So VASP when it comes on, if the borrower meets the eligibility requirements, which are in the handbooks, VA can purchase the loan, reduce the interest rate, and extend the term. And the eligibility requirements are in section 9.04 of the handbook. The loan has to be between 3 months and 60 months delinquent. There may be a trial plan. These criteria may change. This thing was just released last week. There may be some changes to it, but it is coming online. And we are urging, because this is going, as you may know, there's a foreclosure pause in place through May 31st. We don't think that everyone is going to have this up and running by then. So we are urging extension of the foreclosure pause. That is the main, those are the main details right now. So I would say, we're not at May 31st yet. So we're not either at the foreclosure pause time, and we're not at when they're going to start these. But I do think soon you're going to want to ask your servicer, hey, when I have a VA guaranteed loan, is VASP up and running? And so there are real questions coming forward on that, but it is out, it is there, we are working through it, and I wanted to make sure people saw it. So I have a couple of minutes, I have to leave at 1:55. Ellie, are there any quick points you would add to that, or quick questions about the VA servicing purchase? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm muted. And I don't know if you talked about this, but are they extending the moratorium on?
No. We at NCLC are urging. We sent a press release applauding the release of VASP and urging extension of the moratorium. There may be opportunities for sign-on letters. We are going to keep working on that. So just a flag that may be coming. We may be talking with NHRC. This is all very new and happening right now, so we haven't even had the chance to do that yet. But we will be working on thinking about what advocacy is necessary to do that. Simply put, we think all veterans should at least have the ability to have their eligibility for VASP assessed before their homes are sold. And so we don't think it's going to be completely up and running May 31st. In fact, VA doesn't think that. And so if that's not the case, then we really think the moratorium should be extended to make sure people have an opportunity to be evaluated for VASP.
And then I'm not sure if this is about FHA or VA, but I guess the question could apply to both. So servicers are required to offer these options?
So definitely FHA. When it comes online, it comes online. One of the things for VA that many of you know is that the waterfall has been not mandatory. And I think it is an open question right now of whether VASP is going to be mandatory. But FHA says if you have an FHA insured loan, you need to confirm that the people should be evaluated for FHA insured options. We're in we don't know yet, I'd say, on VA, but the indication, the language is that it says servicers are to offer. So I would say they should. And also, servicers really shouldn't be foreclosing on veteran borrowers when there's an option available. And I think that's always a point to make.
Okay, well, it's 1:55 and I want to respect your time. There
Thank you, everyone.
Quite a few questions. I will send them along to you and we'll create a spreadsheet.
Great. And we can work through those, and we can also, if you have questions, you have my emails on the PowerPoint. It's always great to talk to you all. And if it makes sense for me to come back and talk some more, I'd be happy to do it.
Yes, we have also already spoken about having Steve come back maybe in June to talk more detail about VASP when there's a lot more information out. So thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bruce to wrap it up.